Let me tell you something straight, and I'm saying this with love. When a man starts distancing himself, when the calls slow down, the texts get shorter, the energy changes. That is not confusion. That is information. Life is giving you a signal, and the worst mistake you can make is to ignore it. See, a lot of people think love is about chasing. No, love is about choosing. And when someone starts pulling away, they are making a choice, even if they don't say it out loud. Silence is an answer. Distance is a decision. Now listen to me carefully. The moment you feel him distancing himself, you do not panic. You do not beg. You do not over-explain. You do not start auditioning for a role you already had, because the fastest way to lose your value is to act like you don't have any. Here's the truth nobody likes to hear. People respect what they can lose. When you stay available, no matter how little effort someone gives you, you're teaching them that minimal effort is enough. And let me tell you something, nobody wakes up one day and suddenly values what they've been getting for free. So what do you do immediately? You match the energy, not with anger, not with attitude, but with dignity. You step back, you get quiet, you let the space exist, because space reveals intentions. If someone cares, space will pull them closer. If they don't, space will expose the truth you've been avoiding. When a man starts distancing himself, the first thing you have to understand is this: what you are feeling is real. That shift in energy, that silence that suddenly feels louder than words, that sense that something is off. You didn't imagine it. People try to talk themselves out of the truth because the truth hurts, but your intuition is not your enemy. It is your alarm system. When someone wants to be present, you won't have to guess. When someone is invested, their actions will make room for you. Distance is not confusion. Distance is clarity in disguise. Most people make the same mistake at this moment. They panic. They start overthinking every message, replaying every conversation, wondering what they did wrong. They start trying harder, giving more, explaining themselves again and again, hoping effort will fix what attention can't. But let me tell you something real. You cannot love someone into choosing you. You cannot perform your way into being valued. The more you chase someone who is pulling away, the more you push them further out of reach. When a man begins to distance himself, it is not your job to close the gap. It is your job to pause. Because chasing does not create desire, it creates comfort. And comfort without commitment is dangerous. When someone knows you will stay, no matter how little they give, they stop giving. Not because they are evil, but because human nature responds to consequences. People protect what they believe they could lose. Silence hurts, but it also teaches. Space feels uncomfortable, but it reveals truth. When you stop filling the gap, when you stop checking in first, when you stop carrying the connection alone, you allow reality to speak. If someone truly cares, they will feel the absence. They will notice the change. They will step forward with intention. And if they don't, then what you lost was not love. It was attachment to potential. A lot of people confuse consistency with loyalty. They think staying no matter what is strength. Sometimes staying is fear. Sometimes staying is settling. Strength is knowing when to stop overgiving to someone who has stopped showing up. You don't need dramatic exits or long speeches. Your absence is enough. Your calm withdrawal says more than 1,000 emotional messages ever could. Let me say this clearly, because too many people blame themselves when someone pulls away. You are not too much. You are not needy for wanting effort. You are not asking for the moon by expecting communication, respect, and presence. What you are asking for is basic. When basic feels like a struggle, you are in the wrong situation. The right person won't feel pressured by your needs. They will feel motivated by them. Distance is painful because it forces you to face uncertainty. But uncertainty is better than false security. False security keeps you investing in someone who has already emotionally checked out. Distance, on the other hand, gives you your power back. It moves you from reacting to observing. And when you observe instead of chase, you start seeing things clearly. Who initiates, who avoids, who shows up when it matters. Sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that someone can enjoy you, care about you, and still not be willing to choose you fully. That realization hurts, but it also frees you because you stop trying to win someone who is not running the same race. You stop shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable. You stop waiting for consistency from inconsistency. When you respond to distance with dignity instead of desperation, something shifts inside you. You remember your worth. You stop negotiating your value. You understand that access to you is not automatic. It is earned through effort and respect. And whether that person comes back or fades away, you walk away stronger, clearer, and more grounded in who you are. Distance doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it means you were being redirected. When someone starts pulling away from you, the instinctive reaction is fear. Fear of losing them, fear of being replaced, fear that you weren't enough. That fear can make you do things that go against your own dignity. You start checking your phone too often. You reread old messages, trying to find the moment where things changed. You wonder if you talked too much, cared too deeply, or asked for too much. But the truth is, people don't distance themselves because you suddenly became unworthy. They distance themselves because they are unsure, unwilling, or unprepared to give what the connection requires. Distance is not always about you. Sometimes it's about someone realizing they don't have the capacity to show up consistently. And instead of being honest, they step back quietly, hoping the situation will fade without confrontation. That silence can feel like rejection, but it's really avoidance. And chasing someone who is avoiding you only deepens the imbalance. One person runs, the other pursues, and slowly the dynamic turns unhealthy. When you feel someone distancing themselves, the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying to fix it immediately. Not because you don't care, but because care without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. You cannot be the only one holding the connection together. Relationships are not built by effort alone. They are built by mutual desire. If desire has to be forced, it is already gone. There is a difference between communication and over-explaining. Healthy communication invites clarity. Over-explaining comes from fear. When you start explaining your feelings repeatedly to someone who is not responding with action, you are giving them more emotional labor than they have earned. Words without change are empty. Promises without follow-through are distractions. What matters is behavior. Pulling back does not mean shutting down your heart. It means protecting it. It means giving yourself space to breathe and to see things as they are, not as you hope they will become. When you stop reaching out first, you notice who reaches for you. When you stop making excuses, you see patterns. And patterns tell the truth faster than emotions ever will. Many people stay because they are addicted to potential. They fall in love with who someone could be if they just tried harder, healed faster, or cared more. But potential is not a partner. Potential does not call you when it matters. Potential does not show up consistently. Only reality does. And reality is revealed when you stop overcompensating. It takes courage to sit with the discomfort of distance without filling it. Silence can feel unbearable at first, but it teaches you self-control. It teaches you that your worth does not depend on someone else's attention. You begin to realize that peace is better than chasing reassurance from someone who is unsure about you. Sometimes, when you stop chasing, the other person notices. They feel the shift. They realize your presence was not guaranteed. And if they return with clarity, effort, and accountability, then a conversation can happen. But if they return casually, with excuses or half-hearted interest, you will see it for what it is, an attempt to keep access without responsibility. The most important thing to remember is this love does not require you to shrink, beg, or prove your value. The right connection will feel balanced, not confusing. You will not have to guess where you stand. When someone truly wants you in their life, they will make it clear, not through words alone, but through consistent action. When you notice someone slowly pulling away, it creates a quiet kind of pain. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the kind that sits in your chest and makes you question yourself. You start wondering if you imagined the connection, if you misread the moments, if you cared more than you should have. That uncertainty can be more exhausting than a clear ending because it keeps you suspended between hope and disappointment. And in that space, many people lose themselves trying to hold on to someone who is already letting go. One of the hardest truths to accept is that distance is often intentional. People rarely drift away by accident. They may not announce it, and they may not fully understand their own reasons, but their actions reflect a choice. When someone wants to stay close, they find reasons. When they want space, they create it. Recognizing this is painful, but it is also grounding because it shifts you out of self-blame and into awareness. The moment you sense distance, the urge to fix things can be overwhelming. You want to talk it out immediately, to clear the air, to make sure nothing is misunderstood. But not every situation can be fixed with more conversation. Sometimes conversation becomes a way to avoid facing reality. When you keep reaching out and they keep pulling back, the message is already being delivered. It is not hidden. It just isn't spoken aloud. There is strength in restraint. Choosing not to chase is not about playing games or pretending you don't care. It is about respecting yourself enough to not pursue someone who is unsure about you. Chasing creates a dynamic where one person holds all the power and the other is constantly trying to earn attention. Over time, that imbalance erodes self-worth and replaces connection with anxiety. When you allow space instead of fighting it, you begin to see things more clearly. You notice whether the other person makes an effort to reconnect or whether the distance continues without concern. You see whether they miss you or simply adjust to your absence. That information is invaluable. It tells you what words never will. It is important to understand that wanting consistency does not make you demanding. Wanting clarity does not make you insecure. Wanting effort does not make you needy. These are basic emotional needs. When someone treats those needs as a burden, it says more about their capacity than about your worth. You are not wrong for expecting mutual investment. Letting go of the urge to chase can feel like giving up, but it is actually choosing yourself. It is deciding that your peace matters more than the anxiety of waiting for someone to decide if you are worth staying for. You begin to redirect your energy back to your own life, your own goals, your own sense of stability. And in doing so, you stop making someone else's uncertainty the center of your world. Sometimes distance leads to realization. The other person may come back with a clearer understanding of what they want. Other times, distance leads to closure without conversation. Both outcomes are painful in their own way, but both bring clarity. And clarity, even when it hurts, is always better than confusion that keeps you stuck. In the end, what you learn is that real connection does not require constant guessing. It does not leave you feeling anxious or disposable. When someone values you, you feel it in their consistency, their presence, and their willingness to show up even when it is inconvenient. Anything less teaches you an important lesson about what you deserve and what you should no longer accept. When someone you care about starts creating distance, it can quietly shake your sense of stability. The connection that once felt warm and reassuring begins to feel uncertain, and that uncertainty can make even the strongest person doubt themselves. You may catch yourself replaying moments, searching for the exact point where things shifted, wondering if a different word or action could have changed the outcome. This mental spiral is exhausting, and it often keeps you emotionally tied to someone who is no longer fully present. What makes distance so difficult is that it rarely comes with explanation. There is no clear goodbye, no honest conversation that allows you to process what is happening. Instead, there are delayed replies, canceled plans, and a general sense of emotional withdrawal. This kind of behavior can leave you feeling invisible, as if your presence suddenly matters less. But distance like this is not accidental. It is a reflection of someone choosing not to engage at the same level anymore, whether they admit it or not. In moments like these, The natural instinct is to reach out more, to ask questions, to seek reassurance. You want clarity, and you want it now, but clarity cannot be forced from someone who is avoiding their own feelings. The more you push for answers, the more they retreat, and the more unbalanced the dynamic becomes. One person ends up carrying the emotional weight of two, while the other drifts comfortably, knowing they are being held onto. Learning to stop chasing is not easy. It feels unnatural to pull back when your heart wants to move closer. But restraint is an act of self-respect. It sends a quiet message, not just to the other person, but to yourself, that your time and energy matter. When you stop overextending, you create space to see whether the other person is willing to meet you halfway or whether they are content to let the distance grow. Distance has a way of exposing truth. When you no longer fill every silence or smooth over every gap, reality becomes clear. Someone who genuinely values you will feel the absence and respond with effort. Someone who does not will simply continue on unchanged. Neither outcome is something you can control, but both provide the clarity that endless questioning never will. It is important to remember that love should not feel like a constant struggle for attention. You should not have to prove your worth or compete for basic consideration. Wanting to feel secure, respected, and prioritized is not a flaw. These are reasonable expectations. When they are not met, it is not because you are lacking. It is because the connection itself is lacking balance. As you step back, something shifts within you. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself that were overshadowed by worry and anticipation. Your thoughts become less consumed by someone else's behavior and more focused on your own well-being. This is where healing begins, not with answers from them, but with acceptance within yourself. Sometimes the distance remains and the connection fades. Other times the space leads to honest reflection and a renewed effort from the other person. Both outcomes require strength to face, but through this process, you gain a deeper understanding of your own value. You learn that you deserve a connection that feels steady, not one that leaves you constantly questioning where you stand. When someone you're emotionally invested in begins to pull away, it doesn't happen all at once. It starts subtly, almost quietly. Conversations shorten, enthusiasm fades, and the effort that once felt natural begins to feel forced. At first, you may try to ignore it, convincing yourself that they're just busy or stressed. But deep down, you feel the shift. That feeling is not imagination, it is awareness. And ignoring it often costs you more than facing it. Distance creates an uncomfortable silence where questions grow louder. You wonder if you did something wrong or if you asked for too much. This self-questioning can slowly erode your confidence, making you believe that if you just adjust yourself a little more, things will go back to how they were. But real connection doesn't require you to shrink or reshape yourself to be accepted. When someone truly wants to be there, they don't need convincing. The instinct to chase comes from fear of loss. You don't want to let go of what you've built, so you try harder to hold it together. But effort without reciprocity becomes emotional exhaustion. You start giving more while receiving less, and that imbalance quietly drains you. Relationships cannot survive on one person's energy alone. When the responsibility to maintain closeness falls on you entirely, something is already broken. Choosing to stop chasing feels like surrender, but it is actually an act of strength. It means you are no longer willing to sacrifice your peace to keep someone comfortable. Pulling back allows you to step out of emotional survival mode and into clarity. You begin to see how much you were carrying and how little was being returned. Distance also has a way of revealing intention. When you stop reaching out, you see whether the other person notices or simply continues on without you. Their response or lack of one tells you everything you need to know. It shows whether your presence was valued or simply convenient. This truth can hurt, but it is also freeing because it replaces uncertainty with understanding. It is important to remember that wanting consistency is not unreasonable. Wanting communication is not insecurity. Wanting effort is not asking for too much. These are the foundations of emotional connection. When someone treats these needs as optional, they are showing you their limits. And those limits are not a reflection of your worth. As you allow space to exist, you begin to reconnect with yourself. The energy you once spent worrying about their behavior starts returning to your own life. You become more grounded, more aware of what you want and what you will no longer accept. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but it is powerful. You move from reacting to choosing. Sometimes the space you create leads to growth on both sides. Other times it leads to an ending that you were avoiding. Neither outcome is a failure. Both are part of learning how to honor yourself. Distance, when met with self-respect, becomes a teacher rather than a punishment. Through this experience, you learn that love should feel steady, not uncertain. It should bring peace, not constant anxiety. And when someone cannot meet you with the same level of care and presence, letting go is not a loss of love, but a return to your own sense of worth. When someone you care about begins to distance themselves, it can feel like the ground beneath you is slowly shifting. Nothing is clearly broken, yet nothing feels secure anymore. The familiarity you once relied on starts to fade, replaced by uncertainty and unanswered questions. You may find yourself waiting for messages that come later than they used to, or noticing that conversations no longer flow with the same ease. This quiet withdrawal can be more painful than a direct rejection because it leaves you stuck in a space where you are constantly hoping and doubting at the same time. In these moments, it is easy to turn inward and assume you are the problem. You replay interactions, analyze your words, and wonder if being more patient, more understanding, or less expressive would have changed things. But people do not pull away because someone suddenly becomes unworthy. They pull away because something inside them shifts. It may be fear, uncertainty, lack of readiness, or emotional limitation. Whatever the reason, it is not something you can fix by trying harder. The urge to close the distance is strong. You want reassurance, clarity, and the comfort of knowing where you stand. But chasing answers from someone who is emotionally retreating often leads to more frustration. The more you reach, the less they respond, and this imbalance slowly places all the emotional responsibility on you. Over time, this dynamic can leave you feeling drained and unseen. Allowing space is one of the most difficult but powerful responses to distance. It requires you to sit with discomfort instead of trying to escape it. When you stop filling every silence and stop initiating every interaction, you give yourself the chance to see the situation honestly. You notice whether the other person steps forward or remains absent. That response is not something you need to interpret or decode. It is the truth expressed through action. Distance also challenges you to examine what you are willing to accept. It asks you to reflect on whether you are staying because the connection is fulfilling or because the idea of letting go feels frightening. Many people remain in uncertain situations because uncertainty feels safer than loss. But staying in a place where you feel undervalued slowly teaches you to undervalue yourself. As you pull back, you begin to reclaim your emotional space. The focus shifts from their behavior to your own needs and well-being. You start to remember who you were before your peace became dependent on someone else's attention. This reconnection with yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. You cannot build a healthy connection while abandoning yourself in the process. Sometimes the distance creates reflection for the other person. They may realize the impact of their absence and return with greater clarity and effort. Other times, the space confirms that the connection was one-sided. Both outcomes require courage to face, but both offer resolution. One leads to rebuilding on stronger terms, and the other leads to release. Through this experience, you learn that real connection does not leave you constantly questioning your value. It does not make you feel optional or replaceable. When someone truly wants to be in your life, their presence feels steady, their effort consistent, and their intentions clear. And when that is missing, choosing yourself is not an act of loss, but an act of self-respect and growth.